going to do your birth chart delineation. As a matter of explanation, I do like to delineate a chart in a pretty standard way, looking at the sun, the moon, the rising sign first, by house placement, by aspects. We then move on to the houses and what's located in each house. We look at cusps, of course, rulers of cusps, the aspects that are being made, so on and so forth. As you know, chart reading for me, my style is, I mean, I guess you wouldn't know this, but for me, my style is a little bit, while I follow that structure, I kind of, how do they say, ad lib, or just kind of riff, you know, and kind of go wherever the chart is leading me. And since you're someone who has had your chart read and you study your own chart, you know it pretty well, I'm just going to be sort of creative with the way that I do this reading so that maybe perhaps you have some insights that are helpful for you. All right, so starting with your Pisces sun, you've got that Pisces sun in the fourth house. Of course, you know, it's interesting to me, Pisces being a mutable sign, I like to say that the mutable signs have this override ability. So depending upon house placement, aspects being made to them, such as Pluto opposite the sun, you know, we are going to sense that this Pisces sun has some modifications made to it. So opposite Pluto, obviously that adds quite a bit of intensity in the 10th house, and there's definitely a perhaps home, work, a bit of a seesawing happening there, a bit of a conflict between home and work, but overall there's definitely an interest in, profound interest in providing security for the home through what is done at work. And we can see it also with that Jupiter of yours there in the second house, and Saturn as well, willing to work very hard in the areas of material security. So anyone whose sun is found in the fourth house, the Cancer house, they tend to have a desire to feel safe and secure when it comes to home. Along with this Pisces opposite, or Pisces sun opposite Pluto in the 10th house, which gives that sort of Scorpio quality to you, it's a 2-degree orb. It gives the ability also with psychology, with understanding psychology or having an interest in psychology, having an interest in how people's minds work. When we bring it up into the 10th house, you're going to be applying that ability, that strategy to what you do for work. And you already told me that you've worked in finance, and that makes perfect sense with Pluto in the 10th house. That's Pluto to me, you know, ruler of the 8th house, has to do with joint resources and large amounts of money, especially when it makes a trine, albeit out of, it's an out of element trine or out of sign trine. It still does trine that Jupiter in Sagittarius, which is a very healthy Jupiter at 29 degrees, which is in the second house of material security and possessions and self-worth and these types of things. So you're definitely, there's a sense that your identity very much is built upon, you got all the stuff that leads up to your Pluto in the 10th house. So career for you is really important. And it's also something, if it gets triggered, like it was recently triggered by our transiting Saturn, it's something where it's actually interesting. You had it triggered back, what, like in the fall, like September, October, November, something like that. I'm not sure exactly when it was exact, but around the holidays, a little before the holidays, you would have had this triggered, and this would have been a time with career, you know, moving through your first house of identity, you would have sort of been re-examining career. Ultimately, I sort of feel like Pluto being at the top of your chart, in your natal chart, that transiting Saturn, maybe Pluto kind of had the upper hand, so to speak. So, you know, perhaps you stuck with what you're doing for work and career. Plus you've got Jupiter in the 10th house, transiting the 10th house. So it's kind of like, and it's lining up right now with your natal north node. You got a North Node and Jupiter that are transiting, lining up with your natal North Node. So sort of your life path, you probably feel like you're sort of on your life path, or there's a sense that your direction is kind of blessed in a sense. You're headed in the right direction. But I think there probably was a slight reexamination of career, or perhaps a bringing something to light with what you're doing for work and for career. You may have made some changes recently. So, okay, but at any rate, let's move back down to that sun of yours. So sun, you've got this sun also making a trine, of course, to Neptune in the 12th house. Being a Pisces, you know, even though, as I said, it's sort of overwritten in a sense by its placement in a cardinal house and being opposite Pluto, you're still a Pisces. You still are a Pisces. That's still there. This desire to find meaning in life will always be present. And Pisces in particular, there's kind of a misunderstanding with Pisces. A lot of people will, or a lot of times you'll read about Pisces being sort of nebulous about their identity or easy to kind of push over, easy to walk on, this type of thing, that there's a passivity to Pisces. Well, yes, there can be. When you've got, like in your chart, you have your Pisces sun opposite Pluto, you're probably someone who feels a bit more Scorpio, I would bet, especially because that Pluto of yours takes aspects from a lot of different planets. And so your Pluto it's in the 10th house in an angular house. So being someone that is powerful with what you do for career, being someone who is able to transform and have like the world around them, through work and through career, through your efforts, it very much feeds your identity down there in that 4th house where it's kind of protected. So it's sort of like you have this outer part of you, like I was saying earlier, this outer part, this persona that you operate with. And I'm not even talking about your Scorpio rising, but you see what I'm saying? You got it there too. But the outer persona that you interface with the world around you with is much more it's pretty tough. Okay, Pluto in the 10th house is pretty tough. This is without looking at anything else in your chart, So the sun of yours in Scorpio, or in Pisces, that is currently, you've got that Neptune conjunct sun transit happening. This is a time, that's what rules your sun. So as far as your identity as a spiritual man, that's going to be brought into focus right now. Plus you got Mars just about to hit your natal Neptune in the 12th house, which is then trining your sun up to your Pluto. So it's a very transformative time with your kind of your inner world, and asking those questions about even those questions of security and those questions of home versus work versus kind of why am I here? Why you might be really comfortable with career, with what you do for work. Your MC is Leo. It's 29 degrees of Leo, which is an important degree. All the 29 degree points in a chart are those that when you have a big event happen, like through transits, those are the ones I pay attention to when it comes to transits, because they're very sensitive points, and whatever the transiting planet is, you'll really feel that and you'll see that activated in your life. Okay. So, but anyway, that 29 degree Leo MC tells us that the sun, your identity, very much is tied into what you're doing for work. So your ego, your sense of self is, gratified and strengthened by what it is you do for work. So changing that is going to be something tricky and a little scary. When you had the transiting Saturn, as it was moving, it was making a square to your sun as well. I'd mentioned earlier that we had it making a little bit of it was squaring your Pluto and squaring your sun at the same time, making a little T-square. So this is the house of work, the house of home, the house of security. This is the axis. It's one of the axes of security, but it has more to do about kind of our status in the world and how other people see us. Of course, the 10th house, and literally our status, like married, single, employed, unemployed. So you may have been running into, pushing up against these kind of this division you sort of have between this bottom part of your chart and the top part. Okay. As we go through the houses, I'll make this make more sense in concrete terms, at least what I'm seeing. But there is this sense that you kind of have two different sides to yourself. And frankly, with a moon in the 3rd house and two personal planets, Mars and Venus, and Chiron, your wounded healer there, that's very Gemini. So not surprising that the way that this expresses is going to be. And your North Node, of course, as you know, North Node, South Node axis, you've got a South Node conjunct Mercury, which rules Gemini. So there's a quality to you of being dual purposed. Okay, someone has two purposes and needing to sort of focus it on one. All right. So now let's see, what else can we see here? Of course, your sun conjunct your IC, your home life. You'll have to tell me about your childhood. I have a really hard time reading the 4th house when we're talking about childhood. I have Neptune in my 4th house, and so I think it's my own block. It's my own, Vaseline on the eyeglasses, so to speak. But you do have, with the sun and Neptune, that ruler. I don't use the traditional rulers typically when I'm doing a chart delineation, because it just gives us kind of almost too much to work with. I like to keep it simple, so I use Neptune for the ruler of Pisces. Neptune is although your Saturn is important for your moon. But anyway, okay, I digress. So Neptune in the 12th house. What's really interesting, there's kind of two things happening here. So when you're Pisces, especially as a man, right, in Western society, men are expected to show up, do their job, do their duty, not necessarily have any sort of emotional reaction to it, press forward, press on. You know, the masculine's all about like being objective and getting the job done. Well, Pisces is a little bit more about, it's not about the ego. It's not about the self. It's what I call the Christed. I think of it as a Christed zodiac sign. So it's more about self-sacrifice, if anything. Especially when you've got that sun of yours, the ruler of Neptune that we're using for today, is in the 12th house. That's the Pisces house. So as far as ego goes and identity, your identity may have a bit of a flexibility to it, okay? In your personal relationships. With career, that to me feels very solid. I feel like career is something for you. That's Pluto in that 10th house. Pluto to me feels quite fixed. It feels like it has a purpose. It knows where it's going. You know, think of Pluto kidnapping Persephone to take her to the underworld. Like he knew what he was doing something. He had an objective and a purpose. That's Pluto, okay? Pluto does what it wants to do. It's transformative and it's strong and it's powerful. So I feel like through work and career, plus you've got a sun, the sun rules your MC. So that's very much tied into your ego. And so identity in that area, easy peasy. That's easy to know. Like I do my thing and I'm, and I do it, and it brings us down to your 4th house. You do it to take care of your financial and material security needs, no problem. But when we actually look at that Pisces sun, the Pisces sun is, connected to Neptune as well. And this is a little bit more bendable, okay? A little bit more interested in the oneness, interested in kind of, this is why you have an interest in spiritual things, right? Because it's that search for identity, that search for meaning that all of the mutable signs really experience, all throughout their lives. And so the Pluto part, I think, gives you more strength of purpose, but that purpose being that search for meaning, ultimately, in the end. All right, so let's move to your moon now. So moon at 29 degrees of Aquarius. So what does that mean, right? Aquarius is, as you know, when we place it on the moon, there is a humanitarian interest in other humans. Typically moon in Aquarius and in the 3rd house too, they enjoy conversation with other humans. They want to learn about other people, and they do have a humanitarian kind of quality to them. But at the same time, what's so interesting, it's like my mom has this. She's got a moon in Aquarius, and she's the kind that can talk to anybody. So talk to whomever, on the street, whatever, she's real friendly. But when it comes to having those deeper, more intimate connections, it's a little more challenging. It's a little scarier for her. So, and this is sort of what I've seen with different clients that have had an Aquarius moon. They absolutely love the intellectual exchange, but when it comes to the intimate, vulnerable kind of showing all of your warts exchange, that's a little bit more prickly, a little bit less safe feeling, and it feels vulnerable. So they tend to appreciate their independence. They tend to appreciate being able to do the things that they want to do with their life. And having this moon in this placement in the 3rd house also suggests you are able to do a lot of things at once, okay? Mars there as well, Venus there as well. Like we know there's this quality to you being able to do many things at once. And we'll talk about your love life in a second, but there's a suggestion, quite an on again, off again quality with this placement here, okay? Moon in Aquarius, so, traditional ruler Saturn, like I said a second ago, which is in your 2nd house. That's that house of material goods, of our possessions, also our self-esteem. Saturn obviously knows how to work very hard. It understands that to make something happen, you've got to work for it. This moon, though, also, our modern ruler is Uranus, which is in your 9th house, which is the teacher, the guru, and the guide. And you have it in Leo, which was, just generational. But in the 9th house, the teacher, the guru, and the guide with Cancer on the cusp, which brings us back down yet again to your moon in Aquarius in the 3rd house. So we've got a little bit of a loop going on here. So in my mind, also, by the way, your 3rd house, even if we were just to look at modern rulers for all these Aquarius planets in your 3rd house, you still have Capricorn on the cusp, which still brings us to that Saturn of yours in the 2nd house. So 2nd house issues, which have to do with, material security. 9th house issues, which have to do with meaning, being the teacher, the guru, the guide, wisdom, the things that us as human beings, the wisdom that we have learned, also nature, and so all these things. With Uranus there, this gives it kind of a cosmic quality. It's also, 9th house is the astrologer. Uranus rules astrology. It's an 11th house activity. So I can see why you're interested in astrology. It's very, very there it is, in your chart. It does quincunx your Saturn in the second house, though. So like the idea of you being an astrologer professionally, with a Saturn quincunx, it's kind of like, that's probably not going to happen. There's a little conversation between the part of you that's like, well, I got my career, I make good money, da, 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 and the part of you that's like, oh, but I really like this modality of, finding meaning in the world around me. They're quincunxing each other, so they're not really agreeing with one another. Okay, so there's also, then we come back down into your third house. It's like, I can do both things at once. We'll just do all of the things. So there's very much that happening as well. Now, this moon, let me see also. Yeah, you've got a moon Jupiter sextile. This is even further adding even more of that Jupiter teacher guru guide sort of theme to the things that feel really good to you. But then again, and it brings us up into Pluto in your 10th house. So we could talk about this from the place of like being someone who is the teacher, the guru, the guide from this sort of Aquarius place of that Uranus up in the 9th house, these things that have to do with unorthodox, unusual teaching methods, but also with what you do with finance. Perhaps you do use some innovative methods that you've discovered yourself or kind of created or come up with. That Aquarius part of you through work and through what you're doing, it's going to give you in the third house the ability, first of all, to see patterns big time. And secondly, to see things in a way that's innovative and almost genius, because I think of Aquarius as, if you saw The Big Short, in The Big Short, the doctor, played by Christian Bale, he had a genius to him. I would say he was probably Asperger's. But all of this Aquarius stuff, it gives this emotional detachment, in a sense, from the situation. And so this ability to remove emotion and just sit in logic is really powerful with this much Aquarius in the third house. So with work and with what you do with finance, it comes very easily for you, or it's something that like you just get it. And same thing with astrology. It also rules astrology, okay? Because astrology is about, we are taking, I'll give you my little quick primer on how I think astrology works, so to speak, or what it is we're looking at. We've got our solar system, which of course we are all revolving around our star, but we are not static. Our solar system is moving through space. So we're actually, spiraling more or less, okay? To me, astrology is we're just taking cross sections. We're just taking cross sections at a moment in time. We're taking a cross section that's showing us space and time, right? Okay, so the idea being whenever an individual or a situation or a business or an entity, whatever, is created, that moment it's created, takes its first breath, it's that, it's that little cross-section of space-time that comes into existence, and it steps into the system, this complex system, and it becomes part of its moment of creation, okay? So I don't believe it's causal, of course. There's correlation there. So point being, astrology is very much about pattern recognition. Astrology is very much about, because that's what astrologers do. We have observed patterns with certain astrological phenomena. We see the correlating event, okay? And of course, with psychological astrology, we're seeing that we see these correlations in the way people's psyches unfold as they grow and develop. Aquarius rules astrology because Aquarius is very much about the sort of complex mathematics that our universe is built upon, okay? Like the grid, the framework, the mechanism and how it's all working. That's very Aquarius to me. It's mathematics. Mathematics are separate from emotional response, which would be, of course, very human. So to me, when you have this much Aquarius in your chart in the third house, it makes you first and foremost very smart. And secondly, it makes you someone who has a bit of detachment, objectivity, the ability to look at a situation from a removed perspective. So this can play out in your relationships, even though you're Pisces, which is very, Pisces has a desire to unite. You may have in your personal relationship had issues where all this energy flows up into Pluto too, by the way, in your 10th house. You may have been accused of being like a workaholic or someone who's detached or, selfish or blah, 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 all these things, okay? When really you just weren't being fully understood, or you had a partner that wasn't able to just function in a different way than you function, okay? Okay, I digress. Now, let's talk about your Scorpio rising. So Scorpio rising, Scorpio ruled by Mars traditionally, but Pluto is the modern ruler. So Pluto, being your chart ruler at the top of your chart in the 10th house, clearly and opposite your sun, is very, very, very important. I would consider you, if I met you, I probably would never have guessed you're Pisces. I probably would have guessed you were Scorp. Or somebody that had strong fixed placements in your chart, because Pluto at the top of the chart gives intensity to someone's personality. It gives intensity to how they show up in the world around them. When you, with work and with career, there's this sense that, you may be kind of intimidating in a sense to people that you work with, or, you're known as someone who's powerful in your personal domain. Pluto also says, Pluto in Virgo, of course, Virgo, this is where Pluto was for people born around your same time, but Pluto in the 10th house in Virgo, Virgo is about analysis, and your North Node is in Virgo. So this idea of analyzing things, this idea of language, using language to analyze things are very important with this North Node placement. It brings us down to your Pisces Mercury in the 4th house, conjunct your South Node, which is very interesting because what I think you're supposed to maybe be doing with career and with your life path might be a little bit different than what's going to feel right for you. Because if you consider the fact that your South Node shows us something from a past life, shows a path that you've lived, that you've perhaps mastered, perhaps not. Mercury conjunct the South Node tells us you were a teacher of some kind. When we look at Pisces in the 4th house, again, this makes me think of earth. It makes me think of spiritual practice. It makes me think of psychic gift, intuition, shamanistic gift, all these things wrapped into one. But then, as I said on the call, when I saw this Aquarius in the 3rd house, it almost makes me feel like, and plus the ruler of your Pisces in the 12th house, makes me feel like you were from someplace else. And I know it sounds kind of weird, but in my mind, it's kind of like, yeah, it's kind of extraterrestrial. So I know I sound kind of weird, but that's what I see with this. It's like you're from a different place. Now, it doesn't mean you haven't incarnated here before. Another way that we could look at this is Mercury conjunct the South Node in Pisces with that Neptune in the 12th house. Could be that you were here as a spiritual, some sort of a spiritual leader, or someone who was removed in a sense from society because the job and the role you had to play, an element of it was that it was sacred and it was separated from, society. It could have been that you were a monk, or you were someone, because it's in Scorpio, Scorpio is what you've got there in that 12th house. Libra on the cusp, which brings us down to your Venus in the 3rd house. That to me is very much like being part of the brotherhood, like being a monk. So there's a good chance that you practice that role in a past life. And that is one that's quite like, if it's, let's say that was a role you practiced, so that's more organized. It's like being part of an organized religion, but that role is very much about self-deprecation. It's removing the ego, removing the humanness, so to speak, from the equation and just serving on behalf of your God. So that's interesting that you would come again as a Pisces sun, but that Pisces sun is almost hidden in that it's at the bottom of your chart. It's informing that need for safety and security materially, but it is opposite that very strong Pluto at the top of the chart. So it's kind of like you came back, make no mistake about it, I'm here for my own reasons. I'm here for career. North Node in Virgo in the 10th house, that's why you're here. You're here to express what it is your ego wants to express in this life through career. Okay. And for you, that's played out through having a career in finance, which is great. But there may be this sense that if I step into this Piscean role of the shaman or the spiritual leader, I'm doing the wrong thing, or I'm going to be trapped. Yet again, brings us back up into your 12th house. Okay. Sorry, my hand motions are backwards because my camera's backwards, but you know what I'm saying. So, now, what's very interesting is at the same time, you are being activated by Saturn, Neptune, which are activating your sun. They're activating Pluto for you in your 10th house. They're activating, let's see what else. Your descendant, sort of. It's going to be doing that by, that'll be your Neptune making a little sextile over there. You've got a trine happening. You'll have a trine happening from Neptune as well to your ascendant. So your ascendant access will be quite interesting in this next little bit. So that's going to be for a while though. So, okay, Let's move through your houses, because this isn't a forecast, so I'm not going to forecast on you right now. But let's move through. And oh, actually, what I failed to mention was with that Pluto being the chart ruler, before we're using the modern ruler of Pluto, okay, that brings us down to Jupiter in your second house. It's a very clear, obvious connection between your ability to work very hard, to be powerful and transformative, and have this ability to make large amounts of money. It's just something that you have. It's out of, as I said earlier, it is an out of a sign trine, but it's still, it's a 5-degree trine, and it's between two planets that are definitely have been expressed. And the ruler of your second house is Jupiter, because you've got it in Sagittarius, and it's Jupiter in Sagittarius. So it's like you're going to make lots of money. It's at 29 degrees as well. You got Venus coming to make a little conjunction to it as well in this next couple of weeks. So things are good for you in that area. Pluto up there in the 10th house. It's retrograde, as you said. So that Pluto is not as, and it's in Virgo, it's not as, shall we say, like happy as the Jupiter, okay? There's a sense with this Pluto, it's going to be something that's a little bit more of a struggle for your sun, for the part of you that's the spiritual Piscean desire to merge, to put aside one's needs to make the thing happen. There may be a little bit of conflict between those two things at times. You may feel, if you feel like you're out of control in certain work situations, or like you don't have a handle on all the numbers or handle on what's happening with things, that can perhaps really feel uncomfortable for you, especially because we've got a quincunx down to Venus and to Mars. Venus, what you value, Mars, of course, how you're going to take action, your passion, in Aquarius, which appreciates freedom and is a little bit more spontaneous and not so controlled as that Pluto in the 10th house. It's also quite innovative. But the midpoint between those two is 4 degrees. And so that Pluto, exactly, quincunx is the midpoint. And there's that conversation, that innovative part of you, though, that part of you that can take action in a way with your mind and can see and understand concepts relative to money, patterns, trends, is in a sense feeding that Pluto. But there is a little bit of discomfort between taking that information, maybe like the powers that be or something. I don't know. Maybe you have, if there are people that you work with, or I don't know what kind of finance you do exactly. So if you invest for people who have large oodles and boodles of money, perhaps they don't always agree with your take on things, or that very intuitive is what I'm saying. Plus you've got a square to Neptune in the 12th house, to this Mars, Venus in Aquarius in the 3rd house thing. So your intuition is very like, well, I know that this is correct. Let's do this thing. And then the people, if there are those, it could even be market forces that are powerful, right? Might disagree with where you're coming from, but you sort of just know, kind of a thing. Okay, strong intuition, cosmic. It's interesting. It's almost like a mathematic. Aquarius to me is intuitive, but in this very pattern recognizing mathematic almost, but your brain doesn't even, it's math, but it's math like on a very elegant level, where it's like you don't even know how you're doing it, you're just doing it. Okay. So what else with your Pluto? Pluto opposite moon, Pluto opposite sun. And the Pluto opposite moon, of course, is out of, as you know, it's out of sign, but still, your sun moon, that part of you that's a very fundamental part of of your personality, being at the bottom of the chart, opposite Pluto at the top, says that desire for control over the self, and it's different than the Saturnian version of control. It's kind of just like being a powerful person who can make things happen, who can will your way into situations. It's like, it's just, if I want to manifest that, I'm going to manifest it. It's a very strongly, this is a strong chart for manifestation, okay? But of course, we'll talk about your interpersonal relationships as we go through the houses, because both your sort of stellium that's kind of spread apart, but your Aquarius planets and this Pluto to the sun and moon along this axis of work and home can definitely affect your interpersonal relationships, because inside of you there is a little bit of tension, shall we say. All right. Okay, let's move through the houses now. First house, I don't think I need to go into too much description about the first house. Of course, it's identity. We'll leave it at that. Having the chart ruler be Pluto up in the 10th house, and even we'll say the traditional ruler of Mars down in the 3rd house in Aquarius. This is interesting. There's two very kind of different things happening here. Pluto in the 10th house, and of course in Virgo, Pluto in the 10th house is striving for achievement and accomplishment in a way that's powerful, palpable, relative to money, because it goes down to Jupiter in that second house. And also, it does come down as well, and it makes a, your 29-degree moon, which is conjunct, right, you're icy, that Pluto does come down and makes a aspect to it, it's opposite it. So there is this powerful tension between what it is you do at work and how that affects your home life. It could be, I would say this even more so if your moon was in Pisces, but it's not. This strong desire to have foresight, control over also, and this ability to use your intuition to affect what it is you do at work, but it kind of comes from this unconscious place. It's almost like your power comes from this place you don't even realize it sort of comes from. Like you know it does, but you don't really know how it does, kind of a thing. Okay, that's what happens when we have really strong Pisces, Aquarius, fourth house, icy, Pluto on the top of your chart. I mean, this is like Uranus up there too. And sometimes, though, trusting that, those instincts, those things that you have. It looks to me with Jupiter in the second, like your gifts. It's like, you've been blessed. But sometimes, perhaps, really on a more personal level, trusting that that you can let go. Okay, and let go and just flow with situations instead of feel like you need to have some kind of control over them or be in charge of them. Instead, just letting go and letting things unfold. Now, this is also, to me, it looks very magical. I'm the personal astrologer for 3 different psychics, different places in the country, and their fourth houses tend to many times be pretty strong, or they have strong Cancer, or you'll see, of course, strong Pisces, strong Neptunes, as you would expect. Depends on the type of psychic that they are. Pluto opposite the sun is straight up, this is somebody who has the ability to manifest things because it's this power to enact one's will on the world around them. Now, especially when you put it on top of the IC-MC axis, it's enhanced. And then to me, I can see why the shamanistic thing's interesting to you, because that's about magic. It's manifestation as well, but it's using its animistic, using the world around you, the magic of the world, so to speak, understanding on a very deep level, almost an unconscious level, how the different systems of creation actually work, the magic, so to speak, behind how things are animated. So this is like the chart of a magician. Okay, that's what I would say. This makes me think of a magician, and when I say that, I mean like a shamanistic magician, or someone who does have the ability to do magic. It's like to manifest things in a way that's even kind of like, whoa, that's really cool. Got to realize that not everybody has this gift. I'm sure you know that consciously, but really getting frustrated with people who don't have this gift, or sort of not understanding where they're coming from. It looks like things come fairly easily for you. So, okay, so now also in the first house you have, so Scorpio, as far as the first house goes, because Scorpio does make me think of the magician, the sorcerer, etc. Okay, it's that ability to, again, understand the world around you and manipulate the elements more or less, especially with Pluto in the 10th house. Having Sagittarius here as well, ruled by Jupiter, which is there in the second house, tells us, because this is your identity, the first house, you do identify as someone who's successful, straight up. Just it's successful here materially. It's like not a problem. So congratulations, because your North Node being in the 10th house, you've satisfied that North Node. It wants to feel like it's doing its job and it's doing it well. The problem you're going to run into, though, is your North Node is ruled by Mercury, which is conjunct your South Node in Pisces. So now we're seeing a little bit of an interesting tug of war happening here. And that South Node conjunct Mercury squares your Jupiter. So there's a part of you that feels like career, yes, that comes easily, but there's something that keeps pulling you back to this past as a communicator, as some sort of, I feel like you're like a sorcerer. Like, I mean, seriously, fourth house makes me think of witches or pagan magic as well. So really interesting thought here is perhaps you've had experiences in both areas, like both as, like I was saying earlier, this sort of monk, this idea of being removed. You could be a sorcerer too and sort of be removed from society. I mean, it is in Scorpio. It also suggests perhaps the use of, sexuality, sexual ritual, things like that. It's possible. And because that squares your Jupiter, there's still this tension there. There's still this sort of remembering. And of course, as you know, our South Node is always the area when we're in crisis. Many times we'll lean into our South Node. We'll go there because it feels safe to us, because we know it. North Node in Virgo is about analysis. It's also about self-sacrifice. They both are, but Virgo is more like in the real world. In the three-dimensional world, taking care of things that need to be fixed, looking at a messy situation, analyzing it, and creating a system to organize it. That's North Node in Virgo in the 10th house. You may move back into your Piscean South Node conjunct Neptune. Like, you can't help it because your brain is there. That's your intuition. That's the part of you that you can lean on when you just need to know something and you just know it. Okay, but it's like related to what you do for work. That's why I'm saying, like, with work, if you've been successful, you almost can't claim it because it's coming from this unconscious past that you have. It's very like you were a sorcerer. Okay, so like you get things that because you've done them before, all right, but like from a different place, and now you've done them from the spiritual realm, and now it's like you're doing them from the earthly realm. They're really the same thing, okay? Our science just has not yet caught up to, we've not been able yet to explain through simple, like, deductive explanations what it is that causes certain people to have the ability to manifest in a way that's kind of unexplainable, right? Have my thoughts. All right, second house for you. This is your house of possessions, money, personal talents, gifts. You've got Jupiter in Sagittarius here, which, as I've mentioned, is a very strong Jupiter, and it's making a trine to your Pluto up in the 10th house. So it tells us that you will be someone who has the ability to expand your wealth, that you have lots of wealth, because it's Jupiter. Also the opportunity to have people come into your life just at the right time, where you're able to work with them and it ends up being a fortuitous, pairing. Having Saturn here also tells us this is, of course, where you're willing to work very hard. It's the area of your life that you're going to take seriously. It's also the area where you have a fear. So having Saturn in the second house is a fear of having no money, especially Saturn in Capricorn. That is a very strong Saturn, as you know. So it's both this quieter, in a sense, this seriousness that you're going to take when it comes to, like, I could really be without any money. And that would be I would be feeling quite insecure materially, right? I would feel afraid then. That's when your scary stuff pops out. You currently have Pluto, right there on your Saturn, quincunxing your Uranus, more or less. It's approaching a quincunx to your Uranus. So this is a time that can feel a little bit, Pluto's a transformer. It's the one that blows things up and brings new things to light. But for you, because you've got you've got on your third house, that's where you have your Saturn. It rules your third house. And because, let's see, does it does slightly rule your fourth house as well, right? Home. Okay. So to me, the Saturn is speaking a little bit more to how you think. So it's speaking more to your worldview. Also home for you. Home, there's something about home because you're that 29 degree, like just barely in Aquarius, I see. Speaking a bit also to your foundations and your subconscious and, this being sort of great time for past life regression therapy because things are popping up to the surface right now. Okay, Pluto brings things up, like brings zombies up from the dead, more or less. Conjunct Saturn. Saturn is the real world. Saturn is in your second house here, so it's what you value. So you're going to sort of be rubbing elbows up against some old values that you perhaps had in the past. And having the current nodal axis on top of your natal nodal axis, is like, why are you here? What's this for? There's a reason why you ran into Rob Hand when you did, and you ran into astrology when you did, especially with this kind of a chart. This is a chart that would be very interested in this modality. But there is a suggestion here that the way that you look at the world is about to undergo a pretty dramatic change. And you may decide actually to step into some sort of a role where you're working using astrology, using even the shamanistic, as we talked about, the shamanistic modality, maybe being like combining the two and using it for work. So being perhaps a teacher of a kind. You've got Jupiter retrograde right now, which goes direct in May, I believe. So we'll see what happens when Jupiter goes direct and comes back to hit your North Node. Jupiter being the teacher, of course, and the 10th house for you, which is the house of career. Nodal axis, you might have some you might have a teacher or even a guru come into your life to teach you some things that are going to be sort of bringing back the past life stuff, okay? Would not be surprised if you went on a little bit of a sabbatical of some kind this summer or some kind of a spiritual retreat as well. Be a really good time for that. Third house, the house of communication. You have Cancer on the cusp ruled by Saturn, which falls into the second house. And that, of course, is being transited by Pluto right now, as we just said. Communication style. Yes, you have a great brain for finance. That's third house ruler in the second house. That's like a no-brainer. It's Saturn. And so this is the ability to understand over time how to grow money and how to do it in a way that is plan the work the plan. It's consistent. It sticks with the plan. The thing that's fun about your chart is it's got a quincunx to Uranus in the ninth house, which to me is innovative, creative loopholes, loopholes in the law or loopholes in the wisdom of the world, so to speak. You're going to be like, well, okay, this is the way that you do it. This is how you grow the money. But I got this other little idea we're going to throw in there that's kind of creative. So kind of also a little magical as well. But also you've got in the third house, of course, Aquarius. Aquarius is ruled by Uranus and Saturn. Either way, however you want to slice it. We're going to just look at Uranus mainly, but Uranus is in the ninth house, and that is teacher, guru, guide. When it comes to work, it's the consultant, but it's someone who's able to, on a high level, up high in the sky, look down, see patterns. Straight up, that's how your brain works. You're a big picture person. When it comes to smaller details, I would assume with Saturn in Capricorn, Pluto in the 10th house, you'd be someone who would be like hiring out employees to work out the smaller details. Yours is more the big picture, the big moving system, the dynamic system, seeing how, well, this is here right now, but it's going to be like over here, in a little while. So recognizing these patterns, in particular, the way human beings and how psychology works. Aquarius, Pluto, these all have to do with social psychology, okay? Mars conjunct Venus in Aquarius. Okay, let's break this down. So we're going to talk about this from personal life, and we'll talk about this from your work life. So personally, Mars and Venus in Aquarius, first and foremost, if Mars is what you're passionate about and what you go after romantically, if Venus is what you value, and they're in Aquarius, you're going to appreciate intelligence. It's in the third house. It's like you'll find intelligence attractive, and that will be the type of partner you go after. I didn't ask you if you're heterosexual or homosexual or what your orientation is, or asexual. So I have no idea your orientation, so I'm not going to make any assumptions there. But I would say the partner needs to be someone intelligent, and someone who has some sort of accomplishment in the world around them, someone who is independent, that exercises all of the sort of Aquarian traits. It makes a square to Neptune in the 12th house too. So it might feel somewhat elusive. Sexually, we've got this much kind of Aquarius, Neptune in the 12th house, and then you got the third house happening. There is this on again, off again quality. There can be kind of this ability to go for a while without physical consummation in a relationship, but there still is a high need, very high degree of need for mental stimulation. You need a partner that is intelligent, that you can have very in-depth conversations with, that can volley and riff. Like I was saying earlier, this ability to riff would be really attractive to you. Mars conjunct Venus is traditionally considered, an aspect that shows someone who has a high libido. But when we say it in Aquarius, it takes on kind of a different flavor. I actually dated a guy with a Mars in Aquarius and with his Venus in the 11th house. And while his Venus was in Taurus though, but, has a strong libido, when he's in the moment, he's there. If he wants to be there, he's there. But there is an element of it being very on and off. Like he can go for a long time without any kind of contact, and then, then it's on again. It's like a light switch. So you may experience that. Also in the third house, it can get bored. It needs variety, and it may play out and be sublimated because it squares that Neptune in the 12th house. You may sublimate your sexual energy through spiritual practice or through escapism of some kind. It can even be through a few things. It could be sexual partners who aren't even available, like they live elsewhere, they're from a foreign place, or there's someone there's an ethereal quality to the partner where it has to remain on this sort of or disembodied level. There can be that with this, but it can also be Mars and Venus can appreciate the many faces of humanity. So it can be someone who appreciates many different types of beauty and sort of has several types of people that they're interested in, and then also finally, Aquarius can have, connected to Neptune, it can have in a sense an asexuality to it, but because it quincunxes Pluto in the 10th house, I don't sense necessarily there's asexuality here, but perhaps through work you may sometimes feel virile, like through your success at work, it might help you feel like sexy, and that sounds weird, but right, potent, give you a potency and a sense of strength in that area. Moon also being in Aquarius, as I said earlier, Chiron as well, but Moon in Aquarius can be a little bit detached, and so with females, you're going to be attracted to a female who has strong air in her chart, but also strong water, Piscean intuition, okay? So maybe someone with strong air, but a lot of, water house placements or something, but sort of this theme of someone who's very intelligent, but also very spiritual and kind of elusive. There's an elusive quality here. Now, in your partnerships, if you've been accused of being, as I said earlier, selfish, or if you've had a hard time just with committing, like just being in a partnership, that's kind of just not super surprising because Aquarius is interested in connecting with a lot of different types of people. So that can sometimes be the way things play out. And Chiron, your wounded healer, is in the third house. So this wound that has to do with the mind, with intelligence, with communication, with the ability to understand things on a deep level. If somebody was to insult your intelligence, that would probably be kind of like, the ultimate insult in a sense. It would be something you would find quite offensive, I suppose. It's also the part of you, though, in the third house. This is third house. This is Gemini, of course, and it's an Aquarius. This is air. It also suggests you are here to, you yourself, be a communicator of some kind, and your ability to communicate with others. This 28 degree Chiron, you got a little sextile to your Jupiter, of course, and of course it's conjunct your moon. This intuitive ability to teach other people, but it kind of almost has more. There is this thing with self-worth, self-value. It might actually kind of have more to do with that because it's connected to your moon. So it might be a little bit more like your wound. You're able to heal that wound for yourself through what it is you do through work, through manifestation. But perhaps that wound relative to the collective socially. So I'm curious to hear how your social life is, because there's a chance there's a wound there of some kind, and like having to prove yourself in order to feel liked, that kind of thing. But maybe not, because you got all this Aquarius and Pisces just kind of, whatever, just do my thing. Okay, on to the fourth house. Fourth house, I'm going to stop this as soon as I get to the sixth and do the second part on the second video, because this is going to take a long time to upload. Fourth house, this is, of course, our house of Cancer, house of home. It's a quite subconscious house. Sun here in Pisces, you do have a fantastic imagination. Opposite Pluto in the 10th house, it's going to be applied towards career, and it's being fed by that Neptune of yours in the 12th house. Very subconscious Neptune, very intuitive. I kind of feel like it's like you made a deal with the devil, kind of thing. Not really, but there is this ability to be quite imaginative, this ability to know things. People wondering, how does he know these things? Well, because he's got his moon in Aquarius, Sun in Pisces, conjunct, making a sandwich with his IC, which is a very unconscious place inside of us. So I would say again, as I just said, it's going to inform what you do for work and for career, but also your identity is very much tied into this ability to be very intuitive, to know things. And it's kind of hard to make those two work together, to identify with it, but yet it's like you can't claim it because it's like unconscious. It's not like the ego has anything to do with it. You know, it's kind of this funny little, I don't know how to say it. It's this little walk you have to do between these two things. So you just sublimate it on up and out through work, for what you do for career. And you use it to make money, okay? The question to me is that all you're supposed to be doing with your life? Because I don't think that it is. Okay, and then Mercury, of course, conjunct that south node. Mercury in Pisces in the 4th house. Many different directions we can go with this. The ruler being Neptune in the 12th house. Mercury is the voice. It's communicating something, saying something, speaking up about something or teaching something that perhaps was spiritual, but that was maybe you weren't allowed to speak even, you know, Pisces. Maybe you were someone who took a vow of silence. Maybe you were someone who spoke as a channel. You only spoke as a vessel, and they weren't your own words. You were just there to be a vessel. Very much, it's very much a theme as I'm looking at this, the more I think about it. So think of all the possible ways that could play out, right? Where you're communicating, anything that you're communicating is on behalf of someone else. 4th house is the house of the mother. You may have been a mother in one life, right? You might have been maybe you were a nun. Okay, Mercury in Pisces in the 4th house is the house of the mother, right? This is much more female. South node, past life, Pisces, ruled by Neptune in the 12th house. That 12th house is, of course, sublimating. And you got Neptune and Scorp, so sublimating one's sexuality even. And you got Libra on the cusp, which is the marriage. So sublimating and not being married, being a virgin in a sense. The ruler of that 12th house is your Venus and Aquarius in the 3rd house, which brings us down to, that's like Aquarius rules the collective, and then the 3rd house is siblings. So it makes me think of, like, you were, like I said priest earlier, but to me this is almost more like a nun. So could be a priest, a monk, whatever, but some sort of religious person who is separated from the rest of society because of their devotion to their path. All right, and it squares Venus, squares Mars, your sex life. So to me, very much it was like an asexual life. So that's interesting. But perhaps moving into your south node, if you move into those Piscean places, it's like you're compelled and intrigued by them because they feel like you belong there. But at the same time, what is that going to do to your love life and your personal life, right? Like, what's that going to look like? How's that going to affect your ability to be in a personal relationship? So that's an interesting dynamic, but at any rate. Okay. Also, a tiny bit in the 4th house. Of course, you have Pisces in the 4th house, intercepted, Virgo's intercepted in your 10th house. Very important because it's your nodal axis. So it's kind of like you have to have someone else or something else come along to activate those in order for you to sort of step into them. They're not just going to kind of fall into your lap like a lot of other stuff in your chart. I'm not saying that you didn't work really hard, but you've got some things that's just like inherent in like who you are. You couldn't like do it any other way. Whereas with this house is intercepted, it's kind of like they have to be turned on by a person or a transit. And interestingly enough, they are right now by Jupiter and the current world nodal axis, which is lighting up with your nodal axis and your purpose. So I have a feeling you're about to step into a whole new world that you have yet to explore relative to the shamanistic journey. Maybe it's time, if you haven't done ayahuasca yet, to go do that and get some answers from her, or even mushrooms, because that's actually, I like mushrooms for you because it's quite cosmic. The ayahuasca, I would do mushrooms first, then ayahuasca. Hopefully you're not like a police officer. By mushrooms, I mean shiitake mushrooms, of course, on your pizza. Okay, 5th house has to do with creativity. Of course, it's our Leo house, self-expression. It is our ability to, it's a stage. If we need to be on stage professing something, you've got the ruler, accidental ruler, of course, is Mars, which falls in your 3rd house in Aquarius, conjunct Venus. So this makes that connection up into your Pluto in your 10th house. So, and it also makes that connection to Neptune in your 12th house. So it's like receiving, you're very creative with your communications. And as I said earlier, noting patterns and then taking action on them quite quickly, aggressively, assertively, competitively. You definitely want to be seen and are seen as someone who assertively, does what it is you want to do with your life. Mars in Aquarius has a conjunct Venus, has a bit of a humanitarian vibe to it, like you're doing this in the best interest of everybody. It still connects into that Pluto of yours in the 10th house, though. So it's still about perhaps, I don't know if you deal with, like I said earlier, this is psychology of humans and trying to guess the decisions people are going to make and then being ahead of that curve. So quite innovative, being a trend watcher, that kind of thing. So you have to let me know exactly what it is that you do in finance, because I have no idea. But yeah, quite assertive with that 5th house. Mainly when it comes to creativity and sort of self-expression, it's going to be through communication. It's going to be through also taking action in the world of ideas. If we want to look at this from a place of like, you could be like a shaman. I mean, you could be one that's a person that's a catalyst that catalyzes people. Okay, because that Mars in Aquarius is about, the collective and being able to say things in a way that make people do things. So there's that. But it goes up into your 10th house, that Pluto in the 10th house and career. And so you could use this for earthly reasons or you could use this for more spiritual reasons, okay? Now, what else? Anything that I'm sure I'm missing stuff, but it's just the way of the world. Okay, we'll do this 6th house and then I'm going to stop this and start your 7th through 12th house videos, the second section. 6th house, this is daily duties, practices, habits, health, right? You got Aries on the cusp, brings us to your Mars in Aquarius in the 3rd house. There, with Aries on the cusp of the 6th house, you kind of got to do what you want to do with your day. This is not the chart of someone who is like, it's not the typical Pisces, right? Like if you're to say the typical stereotypical Pisces, they just set aside anything they want for other people, okay? Aries on the 6th house of service is more about what do I want in the situation? And, doing it in a way that's going to help the collective because that Mars is in Aquarius, which has to do with, supporting everybody's rights to kind of be free. But it's kind of like, I'm not going to take care and fix your problems, and I don't expect you to take care of and fix all of my problems either, Let's like come together in this this relationship of equality rather than one of us kind of taking care of the other person's needs. And if you're in a relationship where, you can also with Aries on the 6th house cusp, just to speak words of truth, it can be one where we expect other people, like partners and stuff, to take care of our stuff, take care of our needs, but Mars and Aquarius maybe not doing it in return. So that can happen. I mean, and also you got Taurus there, which is ruled by Venus, which is in the 3rd house in Aquarius as well. So hopefully not. Hopefully it's more like this humanitarian bend or this daily in your daily practice, yes, needing freedom of movement, but applying it towards efforts that are for the betterment of sort of the bigger picture for like the collective. So like, also, as far as employees go, this would suggest you have multiple employees, by the way, and that your daily practice has a lot to do with Taurus activities, which is, trend watching because it's that Aquarius and it's money. So, stock market. It's the bull. Hello. All right. 7th house. This is, also, by the way, Taurus in the 6th house is consistency with our health habits, staying consistent and regular with those. Even though it's ruled by Venus in Aquarius in the 3rd house, that tells us you have a lot of physical okay. Mercury and Uranus are both like anxiety and like busy, go. Your brain is like, does not shut up, by the way. So that need for a physical exercise as well through the 6th house, that Aries, like that's physical exercise. Also in Aquarius, it makes me think of things like racquetball or squash or like movement that uses dexterity, but that's also getting that energy out of you and that's competitive. You need like a competitive element to it. Taurus there is a little hedonistic. So that's just like, I'm going to go ahead and enjoy and your Venus is conjunct Mars, so that's sexuality, so maybe it's just that, maybe it's just sexuality, but there's a sort of detachment to it, just enjoying it just for the hedonistic purposes in a sense, although it is square Neptune in the 12th house, which wants more of I don't know, it's a tricky one, you have to let me know, but there is a hedonism in a sense, or a need for a physical consistency in your daily practices, okay? 7th house is the house that has to do with relationship, of course, of all kinds. marital, business, best friend, etc. Taurus on the cusp, of course, gives us Venus as the ruler of your Venus as the ruler of your 7th house. Taurus likes commitment, consistency, stability, likes things to stay the same, but the ruler is in Aquarius and it's in the 3rd house. That is like having a relationship with the world, with the collective, okay? That is, and you've got Gemini in the 7th house, which says you'll be in more than one marital relationship. You've already told me, I already know that. But also, the ruler is in Aquarius, which is also tells us that if I would have looked at this back when you were married, I would say, yeah, you're going to be divorced at some point in your life. And perhaps remarried, perhaps not. Probably not, though, because 9th house, you got your moon in Aquarius. And so if you do get repartnered, recoupled, it would be with somewhat unorthodox, let's say, okay? And perhaps more of a soulful, spiritual recoupling. I would even dare say, you know, the sun also rules the 9th house, and that for you is in Pisces in the 4th house. That could even be that friend that you told me about. That might actually be your soulmate. That might be the one that you could have like a relationship with an earthly partner, but that soulmate is actually the one, or that friend. She may be sort of a soulmate for you, okay? So especially because when I see Neptune squaring your Mars and your Venus, and remember I said earlier about your partner being this disembodied quality, actually was not even thinking about the story you told me until just right now. So bear that in mind. Now, okay, so we're going to stop right here. Sorry, I wasn't even supposed to go in the 7th house, and I did. So I apologize. I'm going to stop right here, pick back up on the next video. Okay, so let's talk about houses 7 through 12. I know I just mentioned, I talked about Taurus being on the cusp of your 7th, and so I'm not going to go into that again. Let's actually jump. Let me just make sure I'm not missing anything important. Oh geez. Okay, well, there's this. Okay, so I don't know anything about your first marriage, obviously. When I'm looking at houses, this is a technique of my own. Might not even be, I don't know. It's one that works, and it's one that I've always used. I kind of look at it chronologically. So in the 7th house, when I see Taurus at the beginning of the 7th house, that to me feels like the initial first marriage that you entered into, okay? And that brings us to Venus there in Aquarius in the 3rd house. Perhaps an element of craziness, whether it was you or her, or an element of neither parties being fully in. It's Taurus, which tells us that it lasted for a while, especially because it makes the quincunx up to Pluto in the 10th house. It was definitely one that was transformative to your status in the world. So, you know, you were married, but there was something about it where sexually perhaps it didn't jive, or there was infidelity, or there was some kind of more than one. Maybe you might, I mean, it's square to your Neptune in the 12th house. So maybe like you were still in love with your person from college. And so the sexual relationship never gelled with your partner. Okay. Something about it though, something about it was crazy making and disruptive. Also in the 7th house, so you have Gemini. Gemini ruled by Mercury, which brings us to that Mercury conjunct the South Node in the 4th house. Interesting, right? South Node, the past life. It's a past life. It's someone that you were with. It's also, Mercury makes me think of even, and Gemini, frankly, when I see Gemini, it does make me think of the twins. It does have a sibling vibe to it. You know, it's sort of a neutral sexuality, but there's a suggestion here that maybe even your partner that you married, your former wife, okay, just go with me on this. If you were a nun or a monk, let's say, or some sort of, and it could be of any, maybe you're a Buddhist monk, I don't know, Tibetan monk or something. Perhaps this was someone that was a brother or a sister in that setting, okay? And then when you came together, you recognized each other on a soul level, but and recognized work left to be done, which was perhaps now we're going to come together in this polarity of the masculine, feminine as a marriage, right? But there was still this Mars-Venus thing in Aquarius, which is quite detached from sexuality, and like we're friends, we love each other in a sense, we're supposed to do this work, squaring Neptune in the 12th house, but it was lacking in something, okay? So you did your work there, you finished it, but wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, done. And Pluto, making that quincunx, would have ended it, okay? Especially by transit. Now, we move into the 8th house. 8th house, the house of sexuality, transformation. You know, this can be the house of the taboo. You have, okay, not right now, okay, just a sec, Casey. You have Gemini on the cusp of the 8th house as well. Gemini, you know, ruled by Mercury, conjunct that South Node. So we have to ask ourselves, I don't know if, since you told me you're Mormon, so I don't know about you, but like I was a virgin when I got married, even though I was a convert to the church. So if this was the case for you, that would mean your first initial contact with sexual intimacy would have been with this Mercury conjunct South Node issue, okay? Which kind of makes sense if in the past life you were you sublimated your own sexual libido and desires through your religion, and you were chaste, yeah, you practiced chastity, right? You didn't experience sexuality. Then that could have affected initially your approach to intimacy, and could have affected, you know, how you first approached sexuality. But then at the same time, we move into your 8th house. You also have the moon there because you've got Cancer. So that moon in Aquarius in the 3rd house. Moon in Aquarius and Mercury in Pisces. Your Mercury's in the Cancer house, the moon house. Your moon is in the Mercury house, right? And they're both in these signs that are the very last signs of the zodiac that have to do with the collective. So this understanding and this desire to blend and to merge with a lot of different types of people, it makes it so that this idea of just separating out one human being that we have that merge with could feel not quite right. It could feel something about it being not quite right. But this idea of exercising that and sublimating, using that sexual libido, that energy, through the process of the shamanistic process, which is very much uses that energy, right? The practice of like Kundalini, flowing your Kundalini, which I'm sure you're very good at with Pluto in the 10th house. You might not even know you do it, or maybe you do. I don't know. But to me, that's how you've been as successful as you've been. You've been able to harness your Pluto. That's your Kundalini. Especially opposite your moon and your sun. So perhaps this ability to be a teacher of some kind through this 8th house, really it's actually more like a learner, I will say. But sexuality, intense sexual bonding with someone who is a sexual teacher is something that could teach you a lot about your own magic and your own talents that you have deep inside of yourself. Cancer in the 8th house, that moon, down in the 3rd house of communication. Again, there's a strong need for emotional bonding through communication, which doesn't necessarily, you can have a very sacred relationship with someone. They could be a soulmate and you've never even touched each other, right? That's kind of this, all right? And 8th house also having Cancer here. Cancer in and of itself desires security. Cancer I think of as a turtle, pulls inside of its shell when it's worried, and then it slowly pokes its head out when it feels safe. So perhaps a Gemini in the 8th house cusp, keeping things in the cerebral, communicative realm and is more comfortable. That kind of intimacy would feel almost, and talking about very spiritual things. I mean, man, this is like past life stuff. This is like also being able to, it's really interesting. I'm kind of wondering if your partner, your sexual partner, you know, there's this, pops up these past life ideas, you know, and so through sexuality, you're able to sort of do a lot of cathartic past life work is what it looks like to me. So, very interesting. We're going to have to talk about this after. We'll have to talk after you've listened to this, and we'll talk more about this 8th house because the 8th house, of course, also has to do with life and rebirth. And when you have Cancer in the 8th house, Cancer is that house of endings as well. You know, the 4th house. Your sun is down there. That is, you know, the moon is the natural ruler of the Cancer house. You know, and having your sun in that house is very much about killing the ego. Right, that part of gets up into the Pluto. Like you need a really strong partner to sort of murder your ego. And I'm kind of feeling like Mother Earth is the one that can do it for you. That's why I'm thinking like ayahuasca. So much stuff to say about this 8th house, this thing that's happening here actually. So I feel like you have some journeys to go on, my friend. I think this summer you're supposed to go do like an immersive shamanistic journey. And that's what this looks like to me. Okay. Yes, that's my proclamation. Okay, 9th house, this is the house of wisdom. Sagittarius house, right? Wisdom, the teacher, the guru, the guide, foreign places. It's something as, you know, literal as foreign travel. Cancer on the cusp, ruler is the moon in the 3rd house. A very strong connection between the 9th house of learning from the world around you versus your own inner world of understanding, the things you learned growing up, okay? Moon Again, moon in Aquarius, moon rules this ninth house. This desire, this thirst, this hunger to be nurtured and nourished by the wisdom of the world around you, the cosmos. You probably have a love of reading, whether it's history, reading about other cultures, learning about other spiritual modalities, learning about other religions. Uranus in this ninth house, I could have said to you, oh, you're Mormon? Good luck with that. Because, and also because the ruler is moon in Aquarius in the third house, which is quite, Aquarius is free-spirited. Aquarius is unorthodox. It is nonconformist. It's got to get to its own, come to its own conclusions on its own. And you have an opposite Pluto. There's no one that's going to make you follow their path. You got to get to it yourself because you have a deep understanding, a deep knowing, trining up into Neptune in the 12th house, very spiritual. Uranus in the ninth house, also, that's the disruptor. It's the rebel. It's like, no, I'm not going to do this organized religion bullshit. This doesn't work for me. Leo as well, you know, your sun that's down in Pisces, which first of all comes from an ego place, but then also, you know, sun down in the 4th house in Pisces. There's also this sense of, look, it's not all about the patriarchy. It's not all about this structure. Maybe it's a little bit more messy. Maybe it's messier than what you think that it is, you know. Humans are very individual. That's also Uranus. So perhaps there's this element of it quincunx to Saturn in the 2nd house. It's very interesting. Saturn in the 2nd house, Saturn in Capricorn is the father, okay? Quincunxing Uranus in the 9th house. Uranus is the rebellious teenager in your house of religion. So, you know, obviously, clearly there is a disruption there of communication. But Saturn also, it's interesting because this is the part of you, it has to do with your self-worth. You know, Saturn only, I mean, it makes minor aspects, you know, does make a minor aspect to your moon, it looks like, and, you know, to your IC. But as far as, you know, an aspect, I consider the quincunx, actually, I consider the quincunx a minor aspect, but one of note, you know, like equal to the sextile. And maybe even more so when you're using a planet such as Uranus, and a planet such as Saturn, when we consider the fact that you have a stellium in Aquarius. So having the Orthodox religion, that's that patriarchy, Saturn and Capricorn, that structure, in the 2nd house of self-worth and identity in a sense. It's your worth, it's security. Being quincunxed by that crazy Uranus in the 9th house that needs to be free from all of that, okay? That's a disruption right there. That's a disruptor big time. And then, you know, Saturn rules your 3rd house, your house of how you're going to logically work through something. But then again, you got all this Aquarius in there, which is, yes, traditionally ruled by Saturn, but also ruled by Uranus, which does things its own way and is rebellious with the way it thinks, right? It sees it's original. So to me, I'm seeing someone who is highly creative when it comes to wisdom, when it comes to philosophy, when it comes to interpreting the meaning of the world around this person, and very, very cosmic. Okay? This is also why I say, when I say 9th house is the house of foreign travel. Well, yeah, Uranus there, you might have been from really far away. Like, cue the wormhole, you know, to get to where you're from. So, you know, you can take that for what it's worth. I just throw that in there as my own, that's my own conjecture, I suppose. But I would say with this much Aquarius energy, it's like you are a light being from another place. So there's that. Pretty cool. This is going to sound really weird, but like, I mean, I don't even know you, never met you, but this chart looks like someone who is like an ascended, I'm not going to go so far as to say an ascended master, but like someone, I'm not into like the woo-woo new agey terminology, but someone who is a master of a kind. Manifestation, mastered it. All the elements of this earth, mastered them. That's why astrology comes very easily for you. I myself have some similar things in my chart. So through my years of studying astrology and studying personalities, people who have these kinds of markers with Uranus and Aquarius and the 3rd house stuff typically have certain characteristics to their personality, okay? Highly intelligent, very good at recognizing patterns, innovative, okay? You feel me? So I do think you are here to be, yes, proving yourself in a sense here it's almost like you had a life here where you were here, but disembodied in a sense. So you were here as a human, but you weren't living the whole, you weren't having to earn your own income, or it wasn't about ego or status, okay? Whereas this life, it's been a bit more about, okay, here you go. I'm going to give you, you're going to be born at a time and space-time where ego and status are going to come and flow pretty naturally for you. But this other stuff that's underneath, these gifts and these talents you've been given, you'll be able to create materially with them. But as you find success in the area and become bored, you're then going to have to step into this sort of scary waters of holding space as a spiritual master, which is about being disembodied in a sense, and being human all at once. What does that look like? And what's the purpose behind that? I don't know. That's for you to decide. But clearly you have done this before, so you'll figure it out. 10th house of career, of course, you've got on the MC, you have Leo, so that's the sun. Sun in the 4th house, again, in Pisces. This gives opposite your Pluto. This gives you fantastic intuition with career. 4th house is about security. 4th house is home. So having a job where, you can make a lot of money was probably something that you were like, okay, I can make a lot of money doing that. I'm going to do that. And then just working really hard at it and doing it. That's, how this would play out. So that's being quite obvious and surface, but if we want to look deeper, we definitely can, because there's a lot of complexity here, okay? First of all, Moon in Aquarius, your emotional nature, that's your unconscious mind, so to speak, we're going to call it for you, because you got your Moon in the 3rd house, so your head-heart thing, your heart almost operates logically in a sense, like you have, most people with their heart, they can't put it into words because the heart is unconscious. The heart is, that's what the moon is, right? The moon is, think of the dark side of the moon. Think of a womb. So I have 4 kids. When my babies were growing inside of me, I couldn't see them. I couldn't consciously see them, right? I just knew they were in there. I could feel them though. The baby first starts to move, I could feel it. That's the moon. The moon feels things, it senses things, okay? Your moon in Aquarius, at 29 degrees, by the way, conjunct the IC, is intuitive in this way you could feel things, but it's almost like energetically you could see as well. That sounds really weird. It's like X-ray vision. It's like you could sense things more than the typical moon. So the typical moon can feel the baby moving, but it's almost like you don't even have a womb, but you know what I'm saying. It's almost like you can feel the situation and look at it and get the outlines of the situation, okay? Just go with me. It's kind of a psychic thing, all right? I think you know what I'm saying. So you've applied that with career. You've applied that with making money and been really good at it. As I said before, that's definitely fed the ego. It's been something where, you've been successful with it, and it's very much gives you a sense of safety and security. Well, I have a feeling you're about to move into an area of your life where you feel a little less sure of yourself in a sense, okay? You may be called to move away from what you're doing for work and for career. Actually, would not be surprised at all, especially when we have Pluto to Saturn. So there's some serious nuclear bomb to Saturn and Capricorn in the 2nd house of money, like you really caring anymore about being that guy. It's maybe it's time for chapter 2 in your life. Neptune conjunct the sun, trining Neptune in your 12th house. I think you probably have, with Mars coming right there, like today, pretty much. I think it is even just today. Mars is activating your Neptune, which would be perfect, right? Oh, it's like 1 degree. Let's see. Let's go. You got Mars currently is at 8 degrees of Scorpio, and your Neptune's 9 degrees of Scorpio. So yes, an approaching activation of your Neptune. Perhaps it's not so surprising that you're talking to me today, right? Especially when our charts have a lot of things very similar with one another, and there's a bit of a simpatico here. So kind of like get how you operate, my friend. Okay, so now also with the 10th house, can you pick that up, Paigey? Okay. Also with the 10th house, the Pluto that's there. So I think you're starting to see the 10th house is a house of ego. And I think the word ego has been so beat up, through the new agey community. It's like ego is a bad thing, and we got to break down the ego. And well, yeah, but if you're here to learn about, Virgo, which is, that's your North Node, in the 10th house, that is, you're here to learn about being human and being someone who has an ego. All right. That's why you're here. But then if we were to say, okay, what's the higher version of Virgo? The higher version of Virgo is service. Virgo is about serving other people. Ruled by your Mercury, which is in Pisces, conjunct the South Node, it is bringing things you've learned from the past into this world. Okay, so just a sec. Yes, Lee, what do you need, sweetie? I'm doing a recording, sweets. Okay, so what's going to be hard about this is stepping into that North Node, really fully stepping into it. It's not just about your career as, in finance or whatever, like your earthly career, because the ruler of your North Node is Mercury. And that's what we need to look at for the information about what it is you're supposed to really be doing in this life. And it is exactly conjunct your South Node, what you've done in the past life in Pisces. That's the healer. Okay? That's what you're supposed to do. So the financial stuff's great. That's awesome. Hopefully you've got all your ducks in a row. You got your shit together, so to speak. So money isn't an issue. So now you can actually step into the thing you're really supposed to do, which is way bigger than you. So it's like, it's ironic actually that the bigger thing you're supposed to do, which is way bigger than like you, ultimately is about completely getting rid of you in a sense. So I think you got like bigger stuff to do. So we can talk about this on the phone. Also in the 10th house, remember, because your North Node is intercepted and it doesn't have a house where it just naturally shows up in your life, you have to have transits come to activate it. Ding, 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 right? You're having those right now. By the way, where is our Jupiter? 23 degrees of Virgo. Your North Node is 24 degrees of Virgo, South Node 24 degrees of Pisces. So you're being activated right now. As I said, it's going to go back, it's going to come forward, going to ding it again. North Node currently is at 23 degrees. So, and it's approaching, it's, moving forward. It's really interesting. Just prepare yourself. May is probably going to be a big month for you. I would even say April. But if you can go on some kind of a trip, then that would be kind of fantastic for you. There's a journey you are yet to go on, my friend. It's only just begun. And I am going to say that I think that your career path is about to undergo some significant shifts, big time. So let's see also. I'm also curious about one other thing here. Oh, yeah. You got Uranus, of course. Uranus this year is going to be hitting right now because your natal Uranus is retrograde. Technically, our current 16-degree Uranus is, it's with an aspect, so it's with an orb, I should say. So it's currently trining that Leo Uranus of yours in the 9th house, of meaning it's also that house of doing something in a way that's a little unorthodox and a little bit unexpected, right? That Uranus squares your ascendant. There's a big part of you that is going to feel really uncomfortable with stepping sort of into this role, okay? That Scorpio, 18-degree Scorpio ascendant then comes and makes a quincunx to the transiting Uranus. So this is big, transformative stuff, okay? Your ascendant, that 18-degree Scorpio ascendant of yours that makes an exact square to your Leo Uranus in the 9th house of the teacher, the guru, the guide, is ruled by Pluto, which is in your 10th house of career. So be prepared. Your status and how you see yourself in the world is about to undergo a huge shift. And if it doesn't, if you hold on to that Pluto that you have, you can do that. That's your choice. You have free will, free agency, as the Mormons would say, right? But Pluto, Uranus, they always take things away. It's such powerful energy. Like my house burnt down during the Pluto-Uranus square that I had to my sun and my moon. It's just that's what happened, and I got divorced. It through circumstance, it will cause things to happen. Okay. Now Libra, and I'm sure Pluto in the 10th house doesn't really like to hear that. Like, what do you mean cause things to happen? Like, in a sense, because you're the magician, you have control over things. But yeah, it's also, this is like cosmic Uranus. It's bigger than us, so it definitely can shift things. You also have Libra in the 10th house ruled by Venus, which is, of course, that Venus and Aquarius of yours in the 3rd house, so conjunct Mars. And, of course, Mars is the traditional ruler of your ascendant. This is such a juicy chart. That Venus in Aquarius is the part that is the appreciation of the collective. It's just a teeny tiny bit in that 10th house. So again, I feel like chronologically you spent most of your life hanging out in that area of Virgo analysis, doing your duty in the earthly world, and now you're about to move into this Libran it could be like a client professional kind of a thing even. And it could even be that with work and career, you have operated in a client professional relationship where you've helped people in an innovative way. You've brought them more money, you've moved their money around, made it more active. That's possible too. But I sort of feel like the higher version of this is that the last, the last section of your life from here on out, right? All of it is going to step way more into Aquarius, which is nonconformist, communicating and teaching in a way that is opening up that Neptune in the 6th house, which is being activated as we speak today, my brother. So I think you are about to step into a journey where you become a bit of a shaman, yes. There's an element here, it's funny because it's not as though you're going to do it to make money. It's almost like it's just may become a big part of your life path where you become, in a sense, like if you were a monk or a nun or something religious in a past life, it's like learning how to walk that path while also still being human, while still being in the world. So in the world and of the world at the same time, and balancing those two things. And really, it's like you're getting a hugely intense human experience from both sides of the fence, secular and spiritual. 11th house, this is the house of the collective. So with this one, is our Aquarius house. You've got Libra there. Libra has to do with taking two disparate elements and finding common ground between the two. 11th house has to do with the collective. It has to do with all of us, the freak flag that we all have inside of us and have the right to fly. This is something you would learn about through relationships. This is a little repetition of the theme we saw with your 7th house ruler being Venus down in Aquarius. So relationships for you can be a place that might be a little tricky to navigate, as far as it's almost like you sense in a way that you're not necessarily supposed to be in a committed one-on-one relationship. It's almost like it's supposed to be with spirit. So I will say that. You have to let me know what you think about that. And so there might be a tendency to juggle multiple relationships or just keep things more on a friendly level or more of a surface level, not so focused on that deep, possessive thing that can happen in human relationships. It's more about the intellectual exchange, the spiritual exchange between two people. Also, connecting the 11th and the 3rd house together as far as groups you might want to belong to. If you don't belong to a stargazing group, you should. That would be so fun. Or something that has to do with combining this Libra desire for harmony and beauty. That's what makes me think of stargazing. And then that Venus, the part of you that appreciates beauty, would be cosmic and also humanitarian efforts. Anything too where you're, it's just so interesting. I just kind of feel like you're supposed to be blending the masculine and feminine together, but I'm not really sure how you're doing that. But I do like a stargazing group for you. That'd be great. 12th house, finally, last house, and we're all done. And I've gone over on time. That's okay. 12th house, this has to do with, of course, the spirit world, the spiritual realm, the formless. Libra on the cusp brings us down to your Venus in the 3rd house, Venus in Aquarius. So again, this gives us yet again this kind of idea of you being from someplace else. Also that 11th house, same thing, very smart, kind of freakishly smart, it seems like, from the things I'm seeing, or at least someone who has a way of appreciating things in the world from a very eccentric, unique place, very intuitive. So yes, on the shamanistic thing, or the shaman journey, Neptune in the 12th house, of course, rules this house. So yeah, you're very spiritual and intuitive, and I've kind of already beat Neptune to death. So that's your chart overall. Let me know if you've got questions. Let's talk about this, and I'd love to do a podcast with you if you are interested in doing that down the road, and vice versa. I'd love to interview you as well and find out more about your journey. All right, thanks a lot. Okay, talk to you later.